After his grandfather, who was a hidden millionaire, died, his fiancée dumped him to marry his rich cousin the day before the will reading. And drop a quick comment saying where in the world you're watching from. Brian Turner stared at his phone, his mother's voice cracking through the speaker. Baby, Grandpa Jerome's gone. The words hit him like a freight train. His grandfather, the man who taught him to fish at Lake Martin, who slipped him $20 bills and told him to chase his dreams, was dead. Brian gripped the kitchen counter, his knuckles white. Behind him, his fiancée Valencia scrolled through her phone, barely glancing up. When's the funeral? She asked, her tone flat. Brian couldn't believe her coldness, but he was too numb to argue. Grandpa Jerome had raised him after his father left, working double shifts at the aluminum plant while living in a cramped two-bedroom in West Baltimore. The man never complained, never asked for anything. 3 days later, Brian stood at the funeral in a borrowed suit, watching the small crowd gather. His cousin Deshawn arrived in a tailored Italian suit, gold Rolex catching the light. Deshawn worked in finance, drove a BMW, and never let anyone forget it. Sorry for your loss, cause, Deshawn said, his smile not reaching his eyes. Brian noticed Valencia staring at Deshawn, her expression different, hungry. That night, she was distant, checking her phone constantly. Everything okay? Brian asked. Fine, she snapped. Just stressed about the wedding. Something in her voice made his stomach turn. The will reading was scheduled for Saturday. Brian had no expectations. Grandpa Jerome died with nothing, or so everyone thought. Friday morning, Brian woke to an empty bed. Valencia's overnight bag was gone. Panic seized him. He called her phone, straight to voicemail. He tried her sister, her mother, her best friend Tanya. Nothing. Then his phone buzzed. A text from his cousin Reby. Yo, you seen this? A screenshot of Deshawn's Instagram story showed champagne bottles, rose petals, and a diamond ring Brian didn't recognize. The caption, when you know, you know. She said yes. Brian's vision blurred. He zoomed in on the photo. There, laughing and radiant, was Valencia, wearing Deshawn's ring. His Valencia. The woman he'd spent 3 years building a life with, planning a future with, loving through every struggle. His phone rang. Valencia. Brian, I need to be honest with you, she said, her voice steady, unapologetic. Deshawn and I connected at the funeral. He can give me the life I deserve. You're sweet, but you're going nowhere. You work at FedEx, Brian. Deshawn makes 6 figures. I'm sorry, but I have to think about my future. The words carved through him like broken glass. We're getting married tomorrow, she continued. I'm calling off our wedding. I already cancelled the venue. I'll send someone for my stuff. The line went dead. Brian sat motionless, his world collapsing. 3 years. Gone in 72 hours. He remembered the night he proposed, how she cried and called him her forever. How she'd promised to build an empire together, to weather any storm. All lies. Brian couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. His mother, Denise, arrived Friday evening with Tupperware containers and fury in her eyes. That girl ain't never loved you right, she said, unpacking collard greens and cornbread. I saw it coming. She was always measuring you against what you didn't have instead of loving who you were. Brian wanted to defend Valencia, but he couldn't find the words. His phone kept buzzing, texts from friends who'd seen Deshawn's posts, messages full of pity and shock. Brian turned it off. His mother sat beside him, holding his hand. Tomorrow's the will reading. You still going? Brian nodded numbly. Grandpa Jerome would want me there. That night, Brian lay awake, memories flooding back. Grandpa Jerome teaching him to change a tire, his weathered hands guiding Brian's young ones. Son, real wealth ain't in your bank account. It's in your character. Remember that. The old man had worked himself to exhaustion, never spending on luxuries, always saving. For what? Brian wondered. Saturday morning came too fast. Brian dressed in the same borrowed suit, exhaustion carved into his face. His uncle Leonard picked him up at 9. You holding up? Leonard asked. Brian shrugged. Deshawn's getting married today. To Valencia. My Valencia. Leonard's jaw tightened. That boy always been a snake. Just like his daddy. The lawyer's office was downtown, a modest building near Harbor East. The conference room was cold, fluorescent lights humming overhead. Brian arrived first, sitting in the back corner, trying to disappear. His mother and uncle filled chairs nearby, their faces grim. Then Deshawn arrived, laughing loudly, Valencia clinging to his arm in a white cocktail dress. She looked beautiful, radiant even. Her eyes met Brian's for a split second before darting away. Deshawn wore a cream suit with a coral tie, his confidence suffocating the room. Brian. Didn't expect to see you here, man, Deshawn said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. Sorry about, you know. But hey, no hard feelings, right? Sometimes love just finds its way. Brian's hands clenched beneath the table. Valencia whispered something in Deshawn's ear, and they both laughed. The sound felt like acid on Brian's skin. Other relatives trickled in, Aunt Cheryl, Uncle Bernard, cousins Brian barely knew. Everyone sat, murmuring, speculating. At 10 sharp, Attorney Mitchell Pembroke entered, a slim black man in his 60s with grey temples and kind eyes. He carried a leather briefcase, his expression unreadable. Thank you all for coming. I'm here to execute the last will and testament of Jerome Henry Turner. He opened the briefcase, removing documents. Before we begin, I must note that Mr. Turner made several amendments to his will over the past decade. The final version was executed 6 months ago. The room tensed. Pembroke cleared his throat. Let's begin. Jerome Turner was a man of few words but considerable foresight, Pembroke began, adjusting his glasses. He came to me 25 years ago with specific instructions about his estate. Estate? Brian's brow furrowed. Grandpa Jerome had nothing. He lived in a rental, drove a 1997 Bic until it died, wore the same 3 shirts rotation. What estate? To my sister Cheryl Turner Williams, I leave my collection of vinyl records and my fishing gear. May they bring you joy as they brought me. Aunt Cheryl dabbed her eyes, nodding. To my brother Leonard Turner, I leave my tools and my workshop storage unit, number 47 at Conway Street Storage. Uncle Leonard looked confused but grateful. To my grandsons and granddaughters, accepting those named specifically later, I leave $5,000 each, to be distributed equally. A murmur rippled through the room. 5,000 each? Where had that money come from? Deshawn leaned back in his chair, smirking. That's nice of the old man. Probably his life insurance payout. Pembroke continued, his voice measured. To my grandson Deshawn Brian Turner, Deshawn sat up straighter, Valencia squeezing his hand. I leave nothing. You have made your path clear through your choices and character. I pray you find wisdom in humility. The room fell silent. Deshawn's face went from shock to rage. What? There must be a mistake. There is no mistake, Pembroke said calmly. Mr. Turner was explicit in his reasoning. Valencia's face drained of color. Wait, what does that mean? He left Deshawn nothing. Her voice climbed an octave, panic bleeding through. Deshawn stood, slamming his palms on the table. This is ridiculous. I'm contesting this. The old man was senile. Sit down, Deshawn, Uncle Leonard said quietly. Show some respect. Respect? For what? He just disrespected me in front of everyone. Deshawn's voice echoed off the walls. Pembroke remained calm, seasoned in family drama. Mr. Turner was of sound mind. I have medical documentation confirming this. Shall I continue? Brian watched Valencia's expression shift from shock to calculation to barely concealed horror. She hadn't married Deshawn for love, she'd married him for money. And there was none. Pembroke turned a page. To my grandson Brian Tell Turner, Brian's heart hammered. I leave the entirety of my remaining estate. The words hung in the air like smoke. I'm sorry, what? Brian whispered. Your grandfather's remaining estate consists of the following: 3 rental properties in Baltimore City, currently valued at approximately $1.2 million. A stock portfolio with Vanguard, currently valued at approximately $2.8 million. A checking account at PNC Bank containing $473,000. A savings account at the same institution containing $1.1 million. And a paid-off home in Ellicott City, valued at approximately $600,000. The room exploded. Brian couldn't breathe. $6.1 million. His grandfather, the man who clipped coupons and reused aluminum foil, was a multimillionaire. This is fraud. Deshawn roared, his face contorted with rage. That money should be split between all of us. Pembroke's expression hardened. Mr. Turner earned every dollar through decades of careful investing and frugal living. He worked 3 jobs in his 30s, bought his first rental property in 1979, and built his portfolio systematically. He chose Brian as his sole heir because, in his words, "Brian has my heart and my values. He'll use this blessing to build, not to waste." Valencia made a strangled sound, her hand flying to her mouth. She looked at Brian, really looked at him, and he saw it all, the regret, the calculation, the desperation. She'd thrown away millions for Deshawn's fake flash. Brian felt dizzy. His mother grabbed his hand, tears streaming down her face. "Baby, do you understand what this means? You're set. You're free." But Brian wasn't thinking about money. He was thinking about Grandpa Jerome, working himself to exhaustion while sitting on millions, never telling anyone. "Why?" "There's a letter," Pembroke said, handing Brian an envelope. "Your grandfather wanted you to read this." Brian's hands trembled as he opened it. His grandfather's shaky handwriting filled the page. "Brian, by now you know the truth. I lived poor because I never needed much, and I wanted to see who in this family had real character. Most failed. You never asked me for anything. You visited because you loved me, not because you wanted something. That's rare. This money is yours to build a legacy. Don't let it change who you are. Love, Grandpa." Valencia stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Brian, can we talk? Privately." Her voice was soft, pleading, the voice she'd used when they first met. Deshawn grabbed her wrist. "Valencia, sit down." She yanked away from him. "I need to explain." "Explain what?" Brian's voice was cold, unfamiliar even to himself. "Explain how you dumped me yesterday for my cousin? Explain how you married him this morning? What exactly do you want to explain, Valencia?" Tears filled her eyes, real or performed. Brian couldn't tell anymore. "I made a mistake. I was scared about our future, about money, and Deshawn promised me security. I panicked. But I love you, Brian. I always have." Deshawn shot to his feet. "You've got to be kidding me." The room watched, transfixed by the drama. Brian stood slowly, every eye on him. For 3 years, he'd made himself smaller for Valencia, apologized for not earning enough, promised her he'd build something. She'd smiled and said she believed in him, but her eyes always wandered to men with bigger wallets, nicer cars. "You don't love me," Brian said quietly. "You love what I can give you now. Yesterday, I was a FedEx worker who wasn't good enough. Today, I'm a millionaire worth your time. The only thing that changed is my bank account." "That's not fair," she whispered. "Life ain't fair, Valencia. You taught me that yesterday when you broke my heart 24 hours before marrying my cousin." Deshawn stepped forward, his expression ugly. "You think you're better than me now? You got lucky, that's all. Old man played favorites because you kissed up to him." Brian turned slowly to face his cousin. For years, he'd watched Deshawn flaunt his success, belittle family members who earned less, treat people like status symbols. He'd stayed quiet, kept the peace. "Not anymore. No, Deshawn. Grandpa Jerome saw through you. He watched you show up twice a year with expensive gifts but never any time. He watched you brag about your salary while looking down on him for working at a plant. He told me once, that boy measures his worth in dollars because he ain't got nothing else." I didn't understand then. I do now. Deshawn's face went purple. You're nobody. You'll blow through that money in 5 years. Maybe, Brian said. But at least I'll still have my character. Pembroke cleared his throat. There's one more thing. Mr. Turner included a clause. If anyone contests this will, they forfeit any inheritance they were designated to receive and must pay all legal fees associated with the contest. That includes the $5,000 gifts. The fight drained from Deshawn's face. He looked at Valencia, who stared at Brian with naked longing. This is messed up, Deshawn muttered. Let's go. But Valencia didn't move. I can't do this. I can't be with you, Deshawn. The room went silent again. Deshawn stared at her. Excuse me. I married you for the wrong reasons. I thought you had money, status. I was wrong about everything. So now you want Brian back. Deshawn's laugh was bitter, mocking. You're pathetic. Valencia flinched but turned to Brian, her eyes pleading. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve forgiveness. But we had something real, Brian. We can get past this. We can start over. Brian felt the weight of everyone's stares, his mother's protective fury, his uncle's quiet support, Pembroke's professional neutrality. He thought about the ring he'd saved 6 months to buy, how he'd proposed at Patterson Park where they'd had their first date. How she'd cried and said yes. How she'd promised forever. 24 hours ago. Forever ended. Start over. Brian's voice cracked. Valencia, you didn't just break up with me. You looked me in the eye and told me I was going nowhere. You said Deshawn could give you the life you deserved, like I was trash you were throwing out. Then you married him. You married my cousin the day after dumping me. I know, she sobbed. I was stupid and shallow and greedy. I see that now. But people make mistakes. Mistakes are accidents, Brian said. You made a choice. You chose wrong. His mother stood, placing a hand on his shoulder. Baby, we should go. You don't owe these people anything. Brian nodded, gathering the documents Pembroke handed him. As he turned to leave, Deshawn grabbed his arm. This ain't over. Brian looked at his cousin's hand, then into his eyes. Yes, it is. 1 week later, Brian sat in the Ellicott City House, his house now. The 3-bedroom colonial had hardwood floors, a fireplace, and a backyard overlooking woods. Grandpa Jerome had bought it 15 years ago, never lived in it, just maintained it as an investment. Now it was Brian's refuge. His phone buzzed constantly, Valencia calling, texting, begging for a conversation. Deshawn's Instagram went private after he deleted all posts about his wedding. Word spread through Baltimore like wildfire. Brian Turner, the quiet FedEx guy, inherited millions. Distant relatives crawled out of the woodwork. Old friends suddenly remembered they existed. Brian ignored them all. His mother helped him meet with a financial advisor, a sharp woman named Patricia Moore who'd worked with his grandfather for years. Your grandfather was brilliant, Patricia said, spreading documents across her desk. He lived on 30% of his income and invested the rest. He never touched the principal, just let it compound for decades. This is generational wealth, Brian. Used wisely, this money can change your family's trajectory forever. Brian thought about his younger sister, Janae, struggling to pay for Howard University. His mother, still working retail at 62. His uncle Leonard, whose back was shot from construction work. What would Grandpa want me to do? He asked. Patricia smiled. He told me. Brian will know. He's got a good heart and a smart head. Let him build something meaningful. That night, Brian sat on the back porch, stars scattered across the sky. He thought about Valencia's voice yesterday. I'll do anything, Brian. Please. I love you. 2 weeks after the will reading, Brian agreed to meet Valencia at Grind Coffee in Fells Point. She arrived early, makeup perfect, wearing the dress he'd always loved. She looked nervous, hopeful. Brian ordered black coffee and sat across from her. Thank you for meeting me, she said quietly. I wasn't sure you would. I needed closure, Brian replied. So did you, I think. Valencia took a shaky breath. I've been in hell, Brian. The marriage to Deshawn was annulled. Turns out he lied about his finances. He's drowning in debt, leases everything, lives paycheck to paycheck. His 6 figures barely covers his bills. Brian said nothing. I was an idiot, she continued. I got dazzled by surface-level stuff and threw away something real. You were building a life, a foundation. I just couldn't see it because I was too focused on what we didn't have. What do you want from me, Valencia? Brian asked. She reached across the table, stopping just short of his hand. Another chance. I know I don't deserve it. But we were good together, Brian. We understood each other. I can be better. I can appreciate what we had. Brian looked at her, really looked. He saw the girl he'd fallen for at the community center barbecue, the woman who'd laughed at his jokes and dreamed with him about the future. He also saw the woman who'd calculated his worth and found him lacking, who jumped ship the moment something shinier appeared. I loved you, Brian said softly. I really did. I know, Valencia whispered. I loved you too. I still do. Brian shook his head slowly. No, you don't. You love the idea of me now that I have money. But you didn't love me when I was just Brian, the guy working at FedEx, trying to build something. That's the difference. Tears spilled down Valencia's face. That's not true. It is, though. And here's what I realized, Valencia, Grandpa Jerome lived poor on purpose. He wanted to see who people really were when they thought he had nothing. You showed me exactly who you are. Brian stood, leaving cash on the table for both coffees. I forgive you. I do. But I don't want you back. I deserve someone who loves me when I'm broke, not just when I'm rich. You deserve someone whose heart you won't break chasing dollar signs. He walked out, feeling lighter than he had in weeks. His phone buzzed, a text from his sister. Proud of you, big bro. 3 months later, Brian launched the Jerome Turner Foundation, offering scholarships to kids from low-income Baltimore neighborhoods. He paid off his mother's house and set up a retirement fund. He invested in Uncle Leonard's construction business, making him a partner. He kept working at FedEx part-time, not because he needed to, but because Grandpa Jerome taught him that purpose mattered more than comfort. One evening, Brian visited his grandfather's grave, fresh flowers in hand. I hope I'm making you proud, he said quietly. I'm trying to honor your legacy, not just spend your money. The wind rustled through the trees, and Brian felt, for the first time since that devastating phone call, at peace. His grandfather's final gift wasn't the money, it was the lesson. Character outlasts currency. Love transcends transactions. And real wealth is knowing who you are when you have nothing, so you'll stay yourself when you have everything. If you believe people should be treated with real love, not like ATMS, hit that subscribe button. Only gold diggers and manipulators won't. Comment character over cash if you can't stand people like Valencia and Deshawn who measure love in dollar signs. Like this video if you believe everyone deserves respect regardless of their bank account.